Welcome to this new series about the NAMC YS-11. You heard it correctly, I'm gonna create a series specifically for this aircraft, which covers how to get started with the aircraft, going to the checklist, programming the flight plan, but also how to use the autopilot and some nice things which I've discovered in this aircraft. Again, some multi-part video. So in the first part we're gonna cover how to get ready for the flight, and in the second part we're gonna take off and then also use the autopilot. And then in the third part we're gonna look at some nice things which I discovered while using the aircraft. But first, let's roll the intro. So here we are at one of the airports in Japan, not one of them which received an update, to be honest. And you can see the aircraft is already standing there, right there. It's unloaded currently, but also there are some things which we need to fix. For example, we need to remove the chocks, we need to remove the covers from the propellers. And we'll likely also need to remove some other things like the pitot cover. In this video we're gonna cover this piece, right, up to, let's say, really making the aircraft ready for taxiing. And then of course in the second part of this video, which I will post likely later this week, I'm gonna show you how to take off with this aircraft, but also how to use the autopilot in this aircraft. But for now, let's go inside the cockpit and let's make the aircraft ready for usage. So here we are in the cockpit of the NAMC YS-11, and you can see a lot of gouges, but also a lot of traditional systems. If we look at this part, for example, it doesn't contain the modern navigation systems, but really the legacy ones, but still you can use it. Keep in mind that this aircraft is already built a long time ago, right, around World War II if I'm correct. And you can also add some modern things like this GNS system. The GNS 430 can be added, and that can be done using this nice EFB tablet which you will find over here. The EFB tablet is kind of limited, but there are still a lot of nice options which you can do. The nice thing is that while moving around, you also have some quick camera views like Shift 1, which brings you to the gouges, where you can see a lot of nice instruments, including the temperatures for the engines, the RPMs for the engines, the fuel flow, but also the flap jumps, if I'm correctly, and some other systems like some other temperature measures, and of course some buttons for the main landing gear, for the front landing gear, but also for the right main landing gear, because this one has three landing gears, or three parts of the landing gear which you can use. Besides this, there's of course the landing gear handler, which is over here, and the landing gear lock override guard. There are a lot of lights also, right? All these lights can be, I would say, are shown and indicate that there is something wrong, so you need to take action on something. The nice thing about this is that there's also a speed limitation. The speed limitation is described here. Let me zoom in a little bit further, where you can see, okay, hey, if I, for example, want to take off, this is the indicated airspeed. If I fly at a level of 18,000 feet, then this is the maximum airspeed. Other than that, there of course are some other things like the flaps. If you're flying with flaps, you can't fly too hard because then you will break them, and that's of course not what you want. If we move to the left side, you can see some other things like the speedometer. You can see the altimeter, which is also covered by this part, but this part also covers the navigation piece, which is also seen on the bottom, right? We can see the knobs here to, for example, change the heading, but also the say knobs to change the navigation course. And here's some meters, right, which will show you how far you are from a beacon. This only works of course with the VOR beacons, which provide the DME, the distance measure equipment functionality, and not all of them are, say, supporting that, so keep that in mind. Then if you want to know how to climb or how you're climbing, you can always look at this one, because this shows you the angle of climbing, right, up or down, and if you want to make a turn, you can use the bank indicator over here. These really nice instruments, and of course there's the altimeter, which is also important. If we press the shift and the 2, we're coming to the yoke part, right? The engine part. So here you can see the throttles for the engines, but here you can also see the HPC levers. And those are really critical to use when starting the engines, so keep that in mind. And we've got the low stop lever, right? Controls the engine, high and ground idle settings. Because if it's set to ground, then you're on the ground. If it's set to flight, then you can fly. Other than that, there are some other things like the pitch trims, which are set. And other nice systems, such as the navigation radios, right? Nav 1 is over here, Nav 2 is sorry, this is communication radio 1 over here, and then the other ones, number 2s, are on the right side. If we zoom into the top, we can also see some other instruments. We can see the ADFs. The ADFs are on the top, both of them. That's something which you can use, of course, but I would say it's not mandatory to use them. Moving a little bit further, we can also press the shift and the 3, which brings us to the bottom part. And on the bottom part, there's some interesting instruments. One of them is the flaps indicator, right? So the flaps are managed by this small button, either up or down. Then we also have some other things like the flap asymmetric tilt controller. We've got the flap motor for stop, and then we've got the left engine view and right engine view trims. So a few buttons over here, which you can see over here. The meters can be seen over here, and this is something which you need to control, but it's also clearly described in the checklist. If we move further down, we can see a lot of other instruments like the wiper controller, but also the transponders, right? So the transponder can be set using these options over here. You can move the transponder, you can change the transponder. Nice functionality. And if we move over here, we can see some other buttons. These are the buttons which are not working, but maybe they will plan to add that. The only one which is working is this DSO Conturon, which means the weather radar. All the other buttons, such as these ones, are not working as we speak. The rudder trim, also there, nose left to right, and here's the autopilot. The autopilot will be covered in a future video where we'll look at the autopilot functionality. It's pretty interesting how to use it, but it works pretty well. Then on the top we see a lot of landing lights, right? If you press shift and the number 4, you will go to the landing lights, to the taxi lights, to the anti-collision lights, but also to the part where you start the engines. And this part is pretty interesting. Also how to start the engines. It's really well described in the checklist, but we will cover that, I would say, pretty soon. Then of course we've got the power settings, and the power settings, right? The battery charge, the external power, for example, but also the generators. They can be easily accessed by pressing the shift and the 5 and moving back to shift 6. Then we can access the fuel control system. So this is where you can control the fuel controls. You can switch on the booster pumps, the emergency pumps. And you can also, I would say, do some other things like the fuel DIs, but also the fuel DIs on the right side, because you can see all nice kind of arrows, which will point to which tank it applies to. So this part applies to the left side tanks, number 1 and number 2, and number 3 and number 4. Then you need to use this one. This engine number 2, this engine number 1, and in total it has 4 tanks. So keep it in mind. Voltmeters, ampere meters are on the top. So that's pretty nice. Then moving to the further left, we can see the CF power. I didn't use them yet, but you can see that most of them you can use. And also I like the wear and tear on the buttons. Pretty cool that they have added that. And if we press shift 8, we will come to the, let's say, kind of fine-tuning of the lights, right? We can, for example, change the integrity or the density of the light on the pilot side. But also on the overhead panel, on the instruments, and also we can change the pitot load selector, the reading light. This one is inoperative, that's where inop stands for, and we've got the windshield heaters and some other nice things, including also the buttons to switch on the seat belts and the seat belts and no smoking, right? So both are covered there. If you press shift 9, you will enter the center where you can switch on the lighting over here, the cockpit dome light off, and some other nice instruments like the com radio power 1, 2, 3, so you can switch on the radios and off. And also on this part we can check the pressures, we can change the pressure from light to heavy, and we can also enable the de-icing and the tail de-icing. Those are covered over here. You can see that they are currently switched to on, because this one is by default switched to on, if I'm correctly. On the right side we can see some other dimmers, which are the ones which can be used for the copilot, right? So on the left side you've got them for the pilot, on the right side you've got them for the copilot. If you press Shift 0, then you can zoom into the copilot section, but hey, that's really up to you. And then of course Shift 1 brings you to this one, to this centerpiece. Now if you're using the Xbox controller, you can press the reset button and it will bring you back to the normal mode. So keep that in mind that you might need to do that. So those, I would say, notifications or helper menus can be easily changed, right? If you go to the general menu, you can go to the flight interface, and inside the flight interface you can switch off these instrument name tooltips and descriptions. You can also show them delayed, then it takes some while before they're shown, or you can switch them completely off. It really is what you prefer. For this video I will keep them on because I would say I want to keep them on because sometimes also I'm figuring out how this aircraft works. So the aircraft has been fully set up and you already can see the GNS 430 here. Now this one can be exchanged, right? So you can change it. If you go to the EFB, you can go to the options menu and then you can say, hey, I want to, for example, have the classic one. What then will happen is it will move really to this nice instrument. And this really, you would say, the old and legacy instrument which you can use, where you still see that it has some, I would say, abilities, although some of them are not operatable. So keep that in mind. So for now, I'm switching back to the WT 430, which stands for working title. Both the PMS and the TDS are paid add-ons and you need to, I would say, buy them separately. And the nice thing is also that you can import the flight plan you created using SimBrief, and you can connect to Navigraph, which will add some more realism to it. However, the good thing is that by default, if you click on the map, it will simply work, right? You can simply move around here. You can zoom out, you can zoom in. Using the EFB, you can see that some of the, I would say, flight parts haven't been, let's say, stored, but that makes sense because we're flying VFR. And I will, I would say, explain that in a later video how to program the flight, but for now we will leave it as is. Is there also another option in that EFB? For example, can you change the ground options? Yes, that's also possible, right? From here you can also remove the chocks and the pitot cover, so you don't have to go outside the aircraft, but of course you can still do that if you prefer to do that. The nice thing is also that you can add the stairs. So if I press the stairs over here, it will add the stairs, hopefully. Let me check if it works. No, I need to open the door first. So you need to open the door and then I can hopefully also add the stairs, not chairs. Chairs are inside the aircraft, the stairs are outside. So here we go. And then when we likely look outside, we can see it maybe, maybe not. Well, also let's go outside the cockpit and then we can see it. So here you can see, so you need to say first open the door and then you can, let's say, expand the stairs. Pretty nice view, right? And also the wear and tear, I love it. Going inside again. So let's, I would say, do the stairs inside and then also the doors inside. So this is one thing which I found really cool. So the sound which you hear is really, I would say, really nice. So once we're in, then we can change also the door to closed. Will take some time. Now the sound is gone and the light is again white, so we can continue. So where to find the checklist? Well, it's a good question. Right, you can access it either by going with your mouse and then going to the EFB, which you can find over here, or you can press the tab key, which will bring up this window. Then you can go to the aircraft, and inside the aircraft menu you can go to the checklist. The checklist currently contains a lot of options, but I don't think they change anything for now. Maybe they will implement it in the future, not sure. And by doing that, right, it brings you to simply the checklist. Some of these items are, say, not having, I would say, any functionality, which, as I would say, how should I explain it? You don't need to switch any buttons or something. You simply need to check the logbook and the aircraft documents on board. I'm not sure where they are, right? I'm still trying to figure out where they are. I didn't find them yet, but maybe they are still somewhere in the aircraft. But hey, I will check it off. And then you can see I can move around using these eye icon, right? So using the eye icon, I can switch off, for example, the emergency lights on. I can check it, and then I can switch on the batteries. And then you can see the aircraft starts to say, come awake, which is nice. Then if we look at the radio instruments, right, they're over here. So I can switch all the radios on, and keep in mind that you also can press those keys, right? So if I press, I think it was Shift 9, then you can access the keys also. So you can visit the radio master and switch it on. Over to the cabin signs, I will highlight them. You can switch the cabin signs on, the fasten seatbelts, and no smoking. And then we can go to the navigation lights. So you can see that you've got multiple ways to navigate to the cockpit. It really depends on what you prefer. This one is Shift 4. And you can see I can easily access the navigation lights also using this method. Then we're going to the HPC levelers. The HPC levelers are those levelers. Let me move around the EFB. Those are these levelers. So it says, okay, hey, where you need to make sure that they're set to off. It might be a little bit hard to see, but here you can see the labels off, HSWL, and here's something else which I can't read for now, but we will figure it out in the future. And then you can do the instrument checks, right? You can check the navigation systems. You can all do all the other things. You can do the fuel checks, and the fuel checks can be, say, seen here. It might be a little bit hard to see, but this is the fuel quantity, right? On the Copilot side, you can see the fuel quantity. This is the fuel quantity which you have in the aircraft, but you can also change that, right? I'm gonna now set it to check, but if you want to change it, you can go to the flight performance, if I'm correctly, then go to the mass balance, and this is where you can see the aircraft, right? You can see how much passengers you have, you can see the cargo you have, but also the fuel you have in the tanks. Currently you can see that only the left main tank and the right main tank are, I would say, filled with some fuel. That's really cool. And we can also change the center of gravity. Currently I will leave it as is, but you can also of course change it if you want, right? You can say, hey, I want to add some more passengers. I want to change it, for example, to 24. Then you can directly see it adds them, and you can change that whatever you prefer to. So let's say 32 in the back, so 24 in the back, 32 or 24 in the front, 32 in the back, which is cool. The only weird thing is that the Copilot seat isn't by default populated, so you need to make sure that it's also populated if you want to use it. And then of course you can change the cargo. By default it will be spread across the airplane, as you can see. And then you might need to change, of course, the fuel, but also you might need to change the center of gravity, because this is the empty center of gravity, empty mass, and then you can also move it around if you prefer to do that. For now we'll leave it as is, and I can say, okay, hey, load the aircraft, which will then start loading the aircraft. It says, okay, hey, do you want to load it immediately, or do you want to save the configuration and use the ground service to the ATC? Well, let's do that, right? So let's do it via the ATC. It still says the loading of the aircraft was successful, so I'm not sure what they mean with the via the ATC, because if you open the ATC, let me move back. I pressed the wrong buttons. Now it's completely mess. So now we need to go close this one. Open the ATC, and then I can say, hey, I want to request, for example, a straight out departure, right? That's what we want to do. So we can ask it, and then the ATC starts kicking
Papa
in.
Hotel Yankee Delta Yankee. Request taxi for straight out departure with Oscar.
NAMC Papa Hotel Yankee Delta Yankee. Taxi to and hold short of runway 28 via taxiway Alpha Cross runway 22 Charlie. Contact tower on 126.2 when ready.
Taxi to and hold short runway 28 via taxiway Alpha Cross runway 22 Charlie. NAMC Yankee Delta Yankee.
So that's enough. So we can go to ground services. Currently you can see that the ground services only contains a request for pushback. So keep that in mind. For now we're going to continue with the checklist, right? Because we were not completely ready. So we're going to make sure that the weight and payload check has been done. That's what we just did. We can check that the pressurization is normal. That's this leveler. So we'll remove the HC for now and then move around. The leveler, right, if we zoom out, it can be found next to the copilot. So make sure it's set to normal. And then we can make sure that the navigation radio is switched on. This one is, I would say, a little bit hard because you can see there's also that megahertz, I would say, button. As you already can see, I pressed it. So you need to make sure that you're switching on this nice small button over here. Else things will go, say, a little bit different. Then we've got the flaps or the pitch trim. I had a hard time setting it to 0 initially, but using the mouse it's perfectly possible to do that. And then we're going to make sure that the transponder, which is over here, is set to off. So by default this has been switched to off, so don't worry about that. Flight controls are free, and then the park and brake is set. It's really important to set it. Reason I say it, as soon as you switch on the engines, the aircraft will slowly start moving, and if you do not pay attention to what happens around you, you will crash into something. So before we start the engines, we need to do some other things. We need to ensure that the booster pumps are switched on. The booster pumps can be found on top, right? So let me figure out the quick button. That's shift 4 or shift 5. I would say shift 5 is probably the best button to use. And then you can switch on those nice buttons, the main the main booster, the emergency booster, and then also the other ones. According to the manual, you switch on all of them. Although I figured out that the main pump is likely enough to say start the engines, right? But you can see they are illuminated. Say all of them. Then the anti-collision lights, again shift 4, right? I also need to test it. So shift 4 is the light section. I will likely post them in the description of this video. So in the description of this video you will find the shortcuts how to move between the different views. So let me do that for you. Then we've got the HPC leveler, which you can find over here. They need to switch to off, which is the case. So, and the park and brake, we already checked it and it's now set to off. Then of course we can start the engines, but as we all know, starting the engines is, I would say, not tricky, but it's not recommended to do it over here because you first need to ask the HC to push you back. Reason for that is if we go outside the aircraft, which over here, you can see that we need to likely move to a different angle because we, or in this case, well, we could likely do it, but then we're likely, I would say, jamming the power unit. So let us get pushed back, right? You can also see the arrow here because we need to move to that area. It's the blue cursor again. This can also be changed, right? If you go to the settings menu, you can change this in the assistance view. You can change the taxiway and you can switch it to off. The taxi ribbon, that's the one which you need to switch off. If you want to quickly switch it on or off, you can also press the Alt and the V key, which will switch it on or off. I always prefer to switch it on because I'm saying not familiar, especially not at this airport. So let's go inside again. So we can remove everything which is now required. However, I figured out one thing, of course, and you know what I'm pointing to, right? We didn't configure the flight plan yet. So let's see how we can do that. So to program the flight, of course, we've got a few options, and the first one is using the EFB, right? So if we go to the EFB and then go to the main screen, you can go to the flight planner, and the flight planner in this case already contains a flight, right? So I pre-programmed it using the world map feature in the EFB, and then added some manual waypoints because we're flying VFR. That also limits you with the capability of sending it to the HC and avionics. You can send it to HC, but if you press send to HC and avionics, you will get a nice warning. It says, okay, hey, please note that VFR procedures are advisory only and cannot be synchronized with the avionics system. So you can't use it, but hey, you can always use it if you want, of course. and I will show you how. But to do that, we first need to start the engines, because that's something I figured out, is that I would say this nice system over here, for some reason it doesn't switch on if you only switch on the power, but it would say start running when you switch on the engines. So let's do that. So we're gonna leave the chocks in place, and the reason I will explain why. I already explained it a while ago, is if you are let's say removing the chocks and start the engines, then you will, let's say, kind of face the challenge that the aircraft will start running, and that's something which the those chocks will, say, prevent. And the other weird thing I observed is that you can't click on these buttons, right? Where you can click on these buttons, these are only highlighters, but you can't, let's say, really press them. So you need to go outside the aircraft and then really, I'd say, move them manually. And to do that, you can of course go into that nice mode, which you can find on the top. You can switch to external mode if you want, but you can also press the Shift and the R key. So if we go inside again and then press Shift R, Shift C, sorry. Shift C, you can go outside the aircraft and then you can remove things which you need. So you can see that the propeller has been already removed, but for example this one has not been removed, right? The pilot coffer, so let's remove them. But let's leave the chocks in place, and just to prevent that if we do something wrong, the aircraft will start running or driving. Of course, you can also leave the parking brakes, or remove the parking brake, or no, set the parking brakes. So let's do that, because it's of course a far better idea. So let's go inside the cockpit again, and then let's get the engine running, and let's see how to do that. By the way, you can see that for some reason it updates the status here, and if you click on it again, right, it doesn't work. So be aware of that. You can't control those external systems when you're in the cockpit. So let's do some things, right? You can of course use these buttons to make sure that the fire triggers are working. Officially it's not, let's say, described in the UFB or in the checklist, but I thought, okay, hey, nice to show you that you can also do that if you want. So we're going to go back to the checklist, and then we're going to go for the engine starter. The engine starter can be found on the top of the cockpit. Let me remove this one. Now of course you want to know the key. Let me try that out for you. I think it's Shift 4. Yes, here we've got it. And then you push it to starter. This will make sure that the engine is set to the starter mode, and then you need to do something so we say special. And the reason to do that is because else nothing happens. So let's make sure that we set everything correctly, right? Because I skipped some part, I see. So let's make sure that the throttles are set to minimum, which is the case. Minimum is simply, would say, hey, they're zeroed out. And also the HPC levels are set to off, which is also the case. Then you need to switch HPC leveler 2, which is this one, to on. Initially I was searching what's on, but on is simply that you move this leveler into this position, which is on. Really easy. And then you go back to the top again, or press Shift 4 and then set it to, in this case, engine number 2, which will highlight the ignition for number 2, as you can see. If you see that, then you're good to go, and you can press this button. You need to press the button, and you need to keep it pressed until that second green light goes off. You can see the starter motor is, say, turning green, and you will hear the engine spinning. I will shut up for now, and then you can hear it. You hear the engine, right? And then after just a few seconds, roughly 30 seconds, it goes out, and then you can release the button. Once that's done, you set the starter mode to safe, which is the center position. Then you'll also see that the ignition goes off for engine 2, and you can repeat the same process for engine number 1. So you can remove this leveler to on. Then you're gonna make sure that you set the engine selector, in this case, to engine 2, or engine 1, sorry, not engine 2. And then once you've done that, make sure that you switch it to start. This will make sure that the ignition is switched on. scroll down and then press that start button and then repeat the same process. This will make sure that the engine will start right, and then once that has been done, let's say it's really good to go. Or we're good to go almost, because we of course need to do some things right, like program the flight maybe. And hear that sound, it's really cool, right? So now it's off, and then we can mark these items off the list, and then you can set both HPC levels to fully in, and for that we need to go back to that position which is on the shift number 2, and then you can press the levelers to 100% full. This one you don't need to do anything with it for now, simply press this to HSWL. You can't move them further down, further forward, and then let's say the engines are running, and you can go to the after engine checklist. And the after engine checklist is something which we'll cover now. Let's first check if something already happens with that navigation system. It's still switched off, right? Kind of weird. Likely I forgot something to do, but maybe not. We will figure that out in a few seconds. So once this has been done, we can switch on the de-icing if needed. For now it's not needed. We can say set the generators to on. You can directly see the voltage starts to change. Also some other things might change over here, which we didn't have a look at. And check battery on and turn on the generators, which is the case. Both inverters, we can switch them on. I saw them, say, peaking a bit. And then we can switch off the external power because we don't need it anymore. And once this has been done, you can safely switch the starter engine to off, which will also prevent that this light keeps being illuminated, and also switch the engine selected to 0. This one, HPC level, we already did, and a fuel trim, and we need to set it to, in this case, to full. This kind of, I would say, weird position or weird thing which you need to do. Watch out that we don't move this one. And what you need to do is you need to increase it. So you can do that with the mouse cursor until you're at it 100% full, or increment it to 100%. This is something which you of course can do without the helper menu, but with the helper menu you can see that it has advantages. You can see how much it has been set to. Then we've got the radar. And that's something I figured out is, I would say, it's set to standby, but I couldn't find it. Maybe if you did find it, let me know, because I was searching like crazy, but I couldn't find it at all. So we'll mark it for now. We'll disconnect the ground equipment. Do we have any ground equipment? I think we had something. Ground power, non-ground power, we also disconnected already, so that's good. And then you can go to the taxi checklist. However, before doing that, I want to show you this nice GNS system, right? So the engines are running, say they're heating up a bit. You can see also some other, I would say, things are being, I would say, illuminated. You can see, okay, hey, there are some lights over here. You can see that the icing isn't illuminated, so we're good to go. But as already mentioned, this is part of a multi-part video. In this video, we looked at the exterior, but also at the interior of the aircraft. We did an extensive review of the cockpit, and we looked at how to use the EFB for certain items, not all of them. In addition to that, we looked at the flight plan and how to validate the flight plan. And as last part, we started the engines. In next part, we will look further into this aircraft, right? We will take it, I would say for a ride, I would say, but almost it's better to say we take it out for a flight. And during that flight, we will use the autopilot. We will have a look at certain instruments and how you can use them in your benefit. I hope you like this. If you like this, then consider to use the like button. If you got questions or comments how to improve it, then feel free to put them in the comment box below. And I hope to see you back next time.